Election. Hello, Jide.
You're welcome, sir.
How are you doing?
Very well.
Okay, good. Just testing microphone to be sure that I'm online.
Great.
Okay. So once we start, I have sharing ability, right?
Yes, you do. But I'll just do a quick intro, then hand over to you to start sharing.
Okay, no problem then. So I can go off my video for now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining again. You're all welcome to the tHRive conference. How's the day been? Ours has been a packed day. This is the third session for today. Great nailing so far. Thank you for joining once again. I can see some usual attendees here. Elizabeth Kings, thank you for joining. Oluwatoyin, thank you. Omotola, Rebecca, Uchenna. Abiodun, thank you for joining. Just giving a few more minutes for more people to join. And then we'll dive right into it. How has it been so far? Trust you've all had a great learning experience. You've taken some insightful lessons from the two previous sessions. And we trust that this one as well will be a value-packed session. The speaker for today, Segun Akiode, is on standby, just waiting for more people to join in, and then we'll go right in. Thank you, Chioma, for joining. You are all welcome. I hope you are not tired. For those that were in the two previous sessions, don't let's get tired of learning. Thank you, Onyade, for joining. You're welcome. Juliet, you're welcome. Okay, a few more minutes and we'll get right into it. Karish, thank you for joining again. Fetch, that's FEJ, thank you for joining. Okay, more people are coming in now, so we can get right to the introduction and then go into the session for today. Bonanle, thank you for joining. Frank, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. It's great to have you all here again. Trust this has been a time well spent, a worthwhile investment for your time joining us for every session. Peter, thank you for joining. Okay. So let's meet our speaker for today. Okay, let me take these comments. Juliet says, it's been awesome. Anyone who has joined at any time will never want to miss the sessions. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. Bolande says, so excited to be here again. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Bolande. You're welcome. Thank you for joining. Okay, so let's meet our speaker for today. Shegun Akionde. I know to most people it doesn't need introduction, but we'll do it anyway. Olayinka, thank you for joining. So happy for you to be here too. Okay. Okay, Shegun Akionde is a born teacher, a chemical engineer, turned strategic HR professional with over a decade work experience covering total reward strategy, organizational restructuring, talent acquisition, human capital development, and HR advisory/consulting. He is the managing partner for Cressida Human Capital Limited, a boutique human resources consulting outfit with an African focus and a global outlook. He is a man of many parts in his quest to be a thought leader in the field of human resources in sub-Saharan Africa with Lagos, Nigeria as his current base. Some of his thought leadership articles have been featured in many online and offline media. Without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Shegun Akionde. You know how we do it at the tHRive conference. Let's see the clap emoji in the comment section. Let's get some reaction. If we don't get enough reaction, I'll just tell him to not speak to us. Okay, let's give a warm welcome to Shegun. Thank you for joining, sir. I'm sure you're good to go.
Yes, please.
Yes, looking forward to you dropping some hot insights for us here as regards total reward. So thank you again.
So can you give me ability to share screen?
Yes, you can do that now.
Okay, let me try that. Okay. Okay, so sharing my screen right about now. Okay, so thank you very much, Adelan Consulting. I count this as a rare privilege to be part of the tHRive business conference, HR conference for this year, 2020. So today, this particular session, I'm sure this is the third session for today. Interestingly, I was part of the first 2 sessions during the day, and I try as much as possible to join in the session, though I may be very quiet. And so this is my session. I don't have a choice than to talk. So today we're looking at total rewards management post-COVID-19. Interestingly, what we're going to be doing today is giving us an overview of the concept of total rewards. So the main objective of this section is broken into 3 parts. One, we're going to be looking at trying to recognize and get to understand the element of the total rewards framework. 2, we're going to look at how do you align the total reward strategy to the human resource strategy, because there is a point of connection between the 2. And 3, we'll be exploring the new normal in total rewards management amidst COVID-19 and beyond. So we'll start off by giving us a general overview of what total rewards is about. Most of the major concepts when it comes to total rewards are going to expose us to that. Then we're going to round up the session by looking at what has changed before COVID-19. In the midst of COVID-19, what has changed? And after COVID-19, what are we expecting to happen when it comes to total rewards management? So I'll go right into it about now. So I'm going to be playing a short video, and let me just be sure that you will be able to hear this. You should be able to hear it now.
Workforce programs can stack up and are one of the biggest expenditures companies make. Many employers are concerned their costs are too high, especially because employees don't always fully value what they get. It's time to help your employees understand the value of your workforce programs. It's time to refresh the structure and mix of your rewards. The time to go total is now. Total rewards is the combination of all monetary and non-monetary investments a company makes in its workforce. It's a key component of the employee value proposition because it's critical in attracting, retaining, and engaging talent. We believe a total rewards program should align with your business and human capital strategies. This connection is the foundation to achieve the employee behaviors you need, like better retention or engagement. And this foundation will allow you to optimize the overall cost and value of your total rewards portfolio. There are new quantitative tools to ensure investments in total rewards deliver real value to both companies and employees. These tools test employees' reactions to cutting back in one program or expanding in another, allowing you to see how your actions impact your workforce. And you'll learn where you can afford to spend less, spend differently, or even spend more. Going total has many advantages. You'll know what your total expenditure is across all programs, so you can ensure the numbers align with business goals, cost pressures, and desired workforce outcomes. You'll be able to make informed decisions about the total spend across programs and whether it's allocated to the ones that drive the most important workforce behaviors and outcomes. You'll be able to vary the allocation and mix of your total rewards portfolio to meet the unique needs of your various employee segments, enhancing their view of the value your company provides. Wherever you are on the total reward spectrum, there's room to improve your return on investment.
Okay, so trying to draw from that little video, just trying to give you an overview of total rewards management. And it has to do with everything that is monetary and non-monetary. But trying to give a short definition to that, total reward has to do with everything the employee perceives to be of value resulting from the employment relationship. So everything that is given to the employee by virtue of the employment relationship that the employee considers as value. So take, for example, if you are employing me and you choose to give me a company car, and everybody feels that a company car is not valuable. I already have a car. But you have a certain employee that the company car is very critical to him or her. What that means is that because I'm perceiving it as value coming from the relationship, I will call that as total rewards. Now, this can actually be broken into two parts. We have one which we call the transactional rewards, and two is the relational reward. The transactional reward are the things that we call monetary. Those are the monetary part of the reward you give to the employee. Things around your base pay, things around the gross pay that the employee gets every single time it comes to the organization, every single month. All of those go into transactional reward. The HMO cover and a lot of things. Anything that has to do with cash or even non-related cash that the employee enjoys the benefits, but is being paid by the organization by virtue of being part of that organization. That's transactional. Relational reward has to do things that are more like intrinsic, things that appeal to the emotions of the employee. There are times when you can choose to offer an employee a job position that they may not exist in your organization. Take, for example, you say senior HR officer. Technically, in your job grading, you may not have a senior HR officer, but because you want to attract the guy, you can choose to give him a phantom job role and say senior HR officer. Because you call the role senior HR officer, the guy would choose to come even on the same pay level, simply because it has to do with something relational, emotions. It has to do with ego and a few other things. So those are the two major parts of reward that you need to consider. Now, putting that into a framework, the whole idea of your total rewards framework is to do three things. One, to attract the employees. Two, to motivate and to retain them. Now, the very first model I want us to consider is the four major dimensions. One is the compensation, which is physical, monetary reward. Then benefit is what we call benefit in kind. So anything that is a benefit to an employee usually is being paid by the employer, but the employee enjoys the benefit. So that's why we call it a benefit in kind. So if my employer decides to procure an HMO cover for me as the employee, I will just need to appear at the HMO, the hospital of choice, and enjoy that benefit. It's a benefit to me as an employee, but the employer pays for it. If there's a company car or a bus or a company bus that commutes me from the office down to my house or the nearest bus stop to my house, because it is a benefit I'm enjoying as the employee, but the employer pays for it. That's a benefit. Then there's the aspect of work-life balance. It's very critical, even before COVID, that the way you integrate work and life and balance your emotions, balance yourself, balance the things you do outside of work is very critical. There is the aspect of career development. Career development in the sense that you as the employee needs to enjoy growth. Nobody wants to stay on one position forever. So that aspect of career development is critical. And each of these differs from one organization to another. How an organization decides to put all these total rewards mixed together determines their own total reward strategy. Now, according to the World at Work, they gave a very interesting model for total rewards. And their own model is very critical because it starts from the organization. So according to World at Work total rewards model, the business strategy is very critical to deciding the total reward strategy. So there is a correlation between the business strategy, the organizational culture, the human resource strategy, then all of this now determines the total reward strategy. So take, for example, an organization that is a startup. Their HR strategy will be completely different from an organization that is already at the growth phase. So if you look at a startup, what they will be interested in terms of people strategy or HR strategy, and by extension, their total reward strategy, how they're going to pitch the pay and everything will be completely different if you pick an established organization that is already in the growth phase. For most established organizations, they would have a lot to offer the employee. But for somebody working in a startup, it is at a risk state because nobody knows whether it's going to break even or not. So it's very critical in designing the total reward strategy that the understanding of the business strategy is critical, the HR strategy is critical, and it now drives into the total reward strategy. Now, according to the World at Work, they broke down the reward model into 5 parts. 1, compensation. That's the cash. 2, benefit. 3, work life. Now they added another dimension called performance and recognition. It's very critical that employees want to know, how are you going to measure my performance on the job? It's very critical because I want to be sure that when I perform, you would recognize me. And the last part is development and career opportunities. So every employee wants to be interested in growth. I've had cases of individuals working for multinationals because they are heavy on growth, they are heavy on development. They may not be heavy in terms of cash, in terms of monetary pay, but in terms of developmental opportunities, ability to work from one location to another, even within the country and outside of the country, they may be very heavy. So my own choice as an employee may be looking at the organization in terms of all these 5 criteria, and the organization as well can design their total reward strategy looking at each of this. So take, for example, if I pick a financial institution, most financial institutions in Nigeria everybody knows them as having a lot of cash. But when you look at it in terms of work-life balance, you may not be able to say anything about a financial institution in terms of work-life balance. You may not be able to say much in terms of developmental opportunities, because when you look at the job grading for most of those organizations, somebody comes in as an a banking officer, or maybe a trainee, executive trainee, and before he becomes a banking officer, he may actually be an AB or assistant banking officer, may have banking officer 1, 2, 3. So by the time you look at that hierarchy, before you get to the top, it may be so massive. But compare that to a startup that has a flat structure, and you're coming in as an officer, and maybe everybody in the officer and in the organization is just about less than 20. You can easily have access to the MD compared to working in a financial institution that you may, throughout your entire work career, maybe 10 or 20 years, you may not have access to the AGM. So depending on the way the organization is, it all goes into attracting the employee, motivating and retaining them. Then comparing the generational gaps of employees. What is important to each employee is different at each of their levels. What you would use to attract a baby boomer is completely different from what you would use to attract a millennial, compared to a Generation X or even a Generation Z, because their interest level differs. But as the total rewards is being created for each organization, you must be able to recognize what category of employees do we need, because all of this will go into giving satisfaction and engagement to your employee. And as a business, you will be able to achieve performance and result. Because if you are not able to attract the right side of employees, or motivate your employees, or retain your employees, there's no way you can be able to have a satisfied workforce that would be able to drive performance for the organization. So that's very critical in terms of the reward model according to the World at Work. So when we now talk about a total reward strategy, it is actually the total compensation and reward approach an organization chooses. So it's a function of the organization deciding the approach they want to use to best attract, retain, and motivate its workforce. So there is no one size fits all total reward strategy. Organization A that is a startup cannot use a strategy that an organization in the growth phase would use. A Nigerian conglomerate cannot adopt a total reward strategy that a multinational would adopt, simply because their financial resources differs, their corporate values differs, and their strategic business goals differ. And some of the other factors that are very critical is the financial position of the organization. This brings to question the ability to pay and to retain the pay. Why decide to offer a salary to an employee that you are not able to retain, or you're not able to sustain the payment of that employee? So it's very critical at every point in time when, as HR professionals, as total rewards professionals, as individuals, business partners for the organization, the financial position is critical. Most of the time, HR professionals forget to remember whether the organization can pay and even sustain the pay. So at the point of recruitment, of retaining, of attracting the employees, it's critical as an organization to be clear as to what is our strategy based on the size of the organization, based on the industry. The way it is paid, salary is in the oil and gas is completely different from financial sector. It's completely different from non-banking. You know, there's financial sector, there's banking, and there's non-banking. All of the pay differs at each of the industry level. The way an HR consulting firm would pay will be different from if you worked in internal HR. This is a function where at the point of remuneration benchmarking, you can get information about. Then the business objective is critical, and salary survey information, very critical in designing your total reward strategy. Now, there are three major basic reward principles at every point in time when anybody is designing a total reward strategy for an organization that must be available. One is equity. We call that internal equity. That goes into your job evaluation, your job grading system. And that leads into creating a competitive salary structure and guidelines to guide how each person will be paid. So internal equity is saying equal pay for equal work done. If an organization, if an individual is carrying 10 buckets, I should pay that guy the same the another person carrying 10 buckets is being paid. It will be unfair. It will not be equitable if somebody is carrying 10 buckets and he gets lesser money than somebody carrying 5 buckets. So that is what internal equity helps you to do in your reward principle. Number 2 is competitiveness. We call it external competitiveness. What is your remuneration benchmarking saying? How do you compare as an organization to your market peer group? And how do you compensate accordingly? So if you are, what is your compensation philosophy, as it were? Meaning, when we compare ourselves to the market, where are we? There are 3 market positions that an organization can take at every particular point in time. That we'll be looking at in a few minutes. 3 is your pay for performance. Now, the link between reward and performance, an ability to recognize performance of the employee as well as their pay. Meaning, if a certain organization, if a certain individual is an high performer, I should have merit increases available, incentive awards or promotional increases or recognition programs that would be able to differentiate my high flyer from the regulars. If that is not in place, then it means everybody can choose not to be doing anything. But if I know as an employee that if I put in more work, I will get more pay, then that means there's a pay for performance in place. So those 3 critical basic reward principles is very critical. Equity, internal equity, competitiveness in terms of external competitiveness, and pay for performance. Now, when we look at the concept of compensation philosophy, it is simply a formal statement that documents the company's position. Remember, when we decide on total reward strategy, we want to decide how we're going to attract our people, how we're going to retain and motivate them. We can now put them in a formal statement. When you now put them in a formal statement, it is now called a compensation philosophy. Now, your compensation philosophy is essentially explaining the why behind employee pay and creating a framework for consistency. So when an organization says we would pay at the 75th percentile, that's you defining where you want to anchor your pay for the entire market in terms of your pay policy. In deciding your pay compensation philosophy, it's critical that it has to be strategic in the sense that it addresses long-term issues relating to how people should be valued for what they do and what they achieve. Importantly, the compensation philosophy sets the target market position to which an organization should anchor its remuneration pay or remuneration level. So when we're talking about market position, it's more like setting what we call your pay policy for the organization. Pay policy in terms of the pay policy line is the target pay positioning the organization has determined based on comparing with market data. So when we look at the market data, okay, so I'm going to take a little pause and break this chart on the screen down a bit. So when we do a remuneration benchmarking, meaning an organization decides to compare itself to the market to do a salary survey, there are three, in deciding your peer group, three major categories of an organization you can compare to. One, individuals that you typically recruit staff from. Two, individuals you typically lose staff to. And three, organizations that are of similar size as yours, but they may not be in your own industry. So take, for example, if I play in the FMCG sector and I discover that all of my marketing guys are going to the bank, if I'm to do a remuneration survey, financial institution will be part of my peer group simply because I lose staff to financial institution. If typically I recruit from other FMCG, they will also be part of my peer group. Then three, I will look at organizations that are of similar size as mine, but they are not in my industry at all. So I can pick a telco, for example. I may not be losing staff to them at the moment, but because they are of similar size, there's a possibility that I may lose or recruit staff from them. So all of that will create my market positioning. Now, when all the salary information has been gathered, or after all the job matching has been done, and we have compared apples to apples, and we are sure that what do you call your own marketing manager? So I call mine marketing associate. I've done all of those benchmarking. The salaries would usually be presented as percentile. Percentile is dividing into 100 equal parts. So dividing into 100 equal parts, then there's also the categorization. So there's the 0th percentile, which is the lowest in the market. There's the 50th percentile, which is more like the median, measure of central tendency. There's 75th percentile, and there's 100th percentile. So that's breaking all of those down. Now, definitely your 50th percentile is median, 75th percentile is higher. So if you look at it in terms of quartile, so your 75th percentile is 3 over 4 of the entire market itself. Then 100 is the highest in the market. So if an organization chooses a market position to lag the market, the median or the 50th percentile is the market level, which is supposed to be taken. Now, if I choose to lag the market, what that means is this: if the 50th percentile, when it comes to median, many individuals will ask me, why use median and not average? When it comes to measures of central tendency, median is a better measure of central tendency than average when it comes to salary information analysis. Yes, the market average is also important, but the median for sake of pay policy is very critical. So if for a job, take for example, front desk officer, if the market's 50th percentile is 100,000 naira, and as an organization, I choose to pay my own front desk officer 50,000 naira, what I've chosen to do is to lag the market, meaning the amount I'm paying that front desk officer is lesser than what the market is paying. So we call that lagging the market. If I choose to give my own front desk officer 100,000 naira, what I'm doing is I'm at par with the market. And if I choose to pay my own front desk officer 150,000 naira, I'm actually leading the market because it is higher than the market 50. So at every point in time, this market position is very critical for every organization. So when an organization says our compensation philosophy is to pay our staff at the 75th percentile in terms of compensation, and in terms of benefits, we would be at par with the market. What it means is this: the organization has decided ahead of time that at every point in time, their pay must be leading the market, while their benefit would be at par with the market. Now, this would only be maintained when they organize constant remuneration survey. Usually for a typical organization, you should be able to do remuneration survey between 2 to 5 years, depending on your ability to be able to conduct that exercise. But if you did it well the first time, there are some organizations that do remuneration survey every single year, because they need to do cost of living adjustment, they need to do a lot of adjustment and a lot of things. They want the pay structure to be moving with the market. So each of these market positions can be taken at any point in time by any organization. Then now moving on, This is where we're going to spend most of the time, and we'll be able to have more time to take questions. So why you look at COVID-19, it's very interesting because COVID-19 is no longer news. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced the adoption of new ways of working. Organizations must now reimagine their work and the role of offices in creating safe, productive, and enjoyable jobs and lives for employees. Now, in addition to the physical and mental stress that COVID-19 has caused, many workers are experiencing a financial strain as well. We know for a certainty that from March, at least for us in West Africa and in Nigeria, between March and now, we spend most of close to 3, 4, 5 months at home until recently, maybe like a month or two ago, before businesses started to open, and they are not even opening at full capacity yet. Most organizations are operating at 50%, 75% capacity. Now, depending on the type of organization, there are some organizations that are essential services, those in the food, those in agriculture, telco, communication, they're essential services, so they are operating even while there was a lockdown. But for a larger percentage of those that are not, the adoption of work from home is being created, giving back to a new normal. Now, this is something that a few years ago, when anybody will have talked about remote working, people frowned at it, organizations frowned at it. But COVID-19 has just brought that to become the new normal. Take, for example, if we were to do this conference that we're having at the moment, we would have had people to gather in a single location, and we'll be having the speakers back to back and the rest. But every one of us are in our various homes. I'm currently working from my home office and having this session with you simply because there is a new normal. At the same time, at the advent of COVID-19, business continuity was a critical factor. And in consonance with business continuity is cash, which means there are a lot of changes that have happened. There are financial strain on the organization itself. There are financial strain on the employees as well. So the financial strain is now two ways. The employer is not making as much money as they ought to make. Secondly, the employees is not getting paid as much as they are paid. So what we want to do is to consider what is the adjustments that organizations has been making in terms of total rewards. And what we're going to be considering will not be limited to Nigeria alone. I'm going to be drawing the research from different parts of the world, trying to drive home the same point as how is COVID-19 affecting total rewards today. So the very first point of research I'm going to be drawing from is from Gartner. So according to a recent study from Gartner, this was a research of HR leaders around the world. This was done in March 2020. They had this to summarize. Almost all organizations have had to cut costs in response to COVID-19. But a majority, 68% of organizations that were surveyed, had also added or increased at least one reward to help employees during the pandemic by late March. Yes, it is already established all around the world, organizations are cutting costs. They are taking what we call staff containment costs, containment of salaries. It's even very interesting that anytime there's an economic downturn, the very first thing every organization thinks about is the salaries. Now, yes, Gartner research confirmed that yes, there is all organizations have done pay cuts. Now, in addition to those pay cuts, there are newer rewards that are surfacing. Talking about the most popular reward change was improving mental well-being, with 32% of organizations introducing new options of mental well-being, apps or virtual counseling. So because it's a pandemic, nobody envisaged a pandemic that is this massive, affecting every part of the world. Yes, now in August, we can begin to have a little bit of relief because businesses are things are trying to get back to normal. Sporting activities that have been shut down is coming back. Air travel is starting to resume both locally and international gradually, now meaning that things are trying to go back to normalcy. But irrespective of that, the mental health of employee is critical. So employees and HR leaders all around the world are beginning to look at how to take care of virtual counseling. There are a lot of coaching therapy sessions that are springing up online today, that it means the employee wellness program is critical. They are working from home. They are coping with a pandemic. They have family members that are affected. It means it's critical. So 32% of employees are introducing new options. Yes, they are cutting costs somewhere else, but they're also introducing a cost somewhere else to take care of their employees. Another popular reward addition was hazard pay. Employed by 20% of organizations in a variety of forms. So organizations all around the world are introducing hazard pay, meaning for individuals that would need to work from home or individuals that would need to come physically to the office, they're introducing an hazard allowance. Majorly when you look at the health sector, I know a certain conversation ensued in Nigeria some couple of weeks ago around the health workers not being paid their hazard allowance. Hazard allowance is a critical example of an introduction of a new pay element, which organizations are now beginning to give to employees to make them work. Also, 16% of organizations increase medical benefits in terms of medical benefit for their employees. 14% increase childcare support services, and 7% increase transportation services in response to the coronavirus. Meaning some organizations even had to, this is a global research by Gartner, so it means this is what is happening all around the world. We'll still come to Nigeria and see and draw references from what we're doing in Nigeria as well. Now, according to onedigital.com, the following benefit may have evolved as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. So while we're looking at COVID-19 disrupting, COVID-19 has also bring some newer benefits, even when it comes to total rewards. One is remote work. Working from home has been the biggest and the most immediate workforce shifts that resulted from the pandemic. Now, what this means for organization is this. The heavy overheads that organizations would have incurred typically if employees were going to the office, because of work from home, it's cutting that by half. So take, for example, since the lockdown started, everybody has shifted to working from home. Myself as an organization, we until maybe a month or two ago, we've been working from home. Then we decided to say, rather than do 5 days, if we could work from home for 2 months, 2-3 months, and nothing changed, why should we go back to the office? Typically. So what we had to do as an organization was to say we would only be doing once in a week. Once in a week, we appear in the office physically. Every part of the week, we work from home. So organizations are beginning to do all of that. Even now that the lockdown is beginning to ease down in Nigeria, some organizations are asking themselves the questions, are we really supposed to work from the office? Because that's what's going to happen by the time every COVID-19 blows over. Organization will start to think flexible work structure. Organization will start to think, why don't we outsource? I think we can outsource this because there are both financial and non-financial benefit to employees when it comes to remote working. Yes, to a large extent, there is a gradual push towards better work-life balance. What do I mean? What that means is that the commute time has been reduced drastically. So for employees that don't need to go to the office physically, they can have more time to bond with their family, more time to work. Now, the downside to it as well when it comes to remote working is to be able to differentiate work from home. Is to be, at least the work has now come to your house. So you cannot tell your employer that I'm at home because they are telling you, sorry, the work is at home. So what are you talking about? So by working from the comfort of their home, employees can benefit from shorter commute, lower transportation costs or little or none, and in many cases, a more focused work environment. So, but the other challenge that will create for employers is By extension, you are now supposed to provide for your employees while they are working from home. Very critical. We're going to get into some of those according to a KPMG survey in a few minutes. Now, another thing that One Digital also said is expense reimbursement. So employees may be challenged as they balance remote work and other activities at home, such as childcare, education, caregiving for elderly families. If remote work is required, employees could consider reimbursing office expense. It's a suggestion, according to One Digital, which means if the employer now realizes that you are working from home, typically, you should be able to have opportunity to your cell phone allowance, your computer equipment, your software and internet cost, meaning the employees can demand from the employer. That's what One Digital is saying. That now that they are working from home, one, most employees are now beginning to use office equipment in the house, at home. What that means also is that who caters for their internet expense, who caters for the telephone calls, who caters for everything. The organization should be able to cater for it. So if I'm not physically using the office, then for me to continue to work from home, the employer must be able to provide all I need to work from home. If not, then the concept of work from home would not really be work from home. It's just going to be at your leisure. So that means you cannot hold me responsible. Now, also providing additional company insured hardware upon request is another option. So if there's a company hardware or company equipment that I need to work from home, it is very critical for the employer to make that available to the employee, even while they're working from home. So also according to One Digital, they talk about the paid time off. Now, and they said, consider making changes to your paid time off programs that provide more flexibility in the usage guidelines and address the surplus of bank hours that many employees anticipate they would have at the end of the year. So rather than wait till the end of the year to decide what you would do, you should start deciding on paid time off. Some organizations are continuing to have employees fully work remotely, which is ideally, but at the same time, they should be able to talk about maybe taking paid time off that are not paid. Okay, so what I mean is this. You should be able to give employees to go on leave while at home. Let them have a little bit of break from their laptop. At least let them enjoy. However, there may still be a way to offer more flexible options or benefit that support work-life balance. Very, very critical even for the employees. Now, according to a KPMG survey, this survey was released in April 2020 in Nigeria, KPMG Nigeria. In the area of employer-employee relationship, we are seeing changes in compensation and benefit practices, mostly targeted at ensuring business continuity. Now, the increasing changes are diverse and unprecedented, just like the virus itself. The changes depend on the type of business. So how each business is responding to COVID-19 differs. How the industry, so if it's an essential industry, the way they are responding is completely different from the non-essential. As a matter of fact, internet-based companies, Zoom, for example, is making a lot of killing at this period because everybody's moving online. So any organization that is offering technology service at this period that everybody needs, definitely their response to COVID-19 will be different from an organization that is offering something completely non-essential even at this period. Then the changes in the country is different as a matter of. Now, one thing that is clear is that there's a changing preference that is now giving birth to a new normal. So now let's take this home now. Remote working in Nigeria. Now, this is a part of the emerging new normal. Before COVID-19, many organizations viewed with skepticism the idea of remote working. Now, companies are learning quickly the tools and support that employees require to be effective. Now, we must be realistic with ourselves. The greatest challenge we are having in Nigeria when it comes to remote working, according to the KPMG survey, is one, unreliable power supply. As a matter of fact, a few minutes before this session, NEPA decided to strike. So I needed to go to the alternative power. That was, you have to create alternative power. So the question now comes to play. There's also the issue of data and connectivity for the employees. And there's also the issue of how do I know my employees is working from home? how do I measure productivity? How do I measure the work done? So there is now a gradual shift between measuring appearing in the office physically and measuring me by the result that I get on the job. Now, it's also critical that organization needs to decide, are we going to provide internet subsidy or data and connectivity subsidy for the employees, or power supply subsidy? Whichever way it is, the employer must make provision. So as much as you're cutting costs somewhere else for business continuity, there are some costs you must make available for your employees, which is very critical. I know a certain organization in this country that shortly before COVID-19 happened, everybody works from a desktop computer in the office. Now, what COVID-19 has made them to do is to get laptops for employees because they do not need to come to the office. So immediately they created laptops for employees. That's an extra cost they would need to incur. So if the organization was not thinking that way before, they would need to think that way now. In terms of softwares to measure productivity, softwares to measure what is being done. So rather than appear in the office every single morning, spend 3 hours in traffic, you can actually resume from your home office. And what employers would need to check now is productivity in terms of results. What are you expected to do today? What are you expected to do this week? If it is done by 12 p.m. because you're working from home, then you're done for the day. Rather than which is what usually comes to play when employees were appearing in the office. They come to the office 8 hours, spend all the time in traffic, they boot, they gist, and the rest, and they may not even get anything done because they come physically. Because they are there physically, you feel, yes, they are working. But now COVID-19 is bringing up the question of how do we measure performance of our employees? Very critical, brought forward by the KPMG survey. Also very critical is how are employers responding to staff cost containment? Now, KPMG actually did a survey of 106 companies, and at the 2016-2017 recession, many companies adopted the following costs: containment costs, recruitment freeze, downsizing or right-sizing, budget freeze, salary freeze, etc. And when this survey was done at the advent of COVID-19, there is a repeat of exactly each of those things. The first reaction is that a lot of employers are putting recruitment on freeze at this period. As a matter of fact, any recruitment you are seeing now are critical roles. Yes, I've had cause to fill 3 top-level heads of department roles during this COVID lockdown. But these organizations needed the role because they were senior level roles. Now, you will see more of critical roles. So any role that is not critical, you see the organization putting it on freeze. Then you see a lot of downsizing and right sizing happening. To a very large extent, there was an opera when a certain bank in Nigeria decided to say they were laying off the outsourced staff and they were returning them back to the outsourcing organization simply because some of them are tea boys, tea girls, and who is going to drink tea at this period? They're all drinking tea from their house. So if they choose not to use that services anymore, then it's like cutting costs for them. So there are a lot of downsizing happening. It's no longer news that a lot of individuals have lost their job during this COVID-19 period. Now, the bright side to it is that a lot of jobs are also going to be created. Now, the bright side to it as well is that if there's anything that COVID-19 has brought to our realization, is the fact that I can be anywhere and I will deliver results. So remote work means that even post-COVID-19, there is going to be an upsurge of freelancing a lot. Go and record that. There's going to be an upsurge of freelancing. Outsourcing is going to take a new dimension. Organizations will start to embrace outsourcing more, simply because they will start to ask themselves the question, is this a cost I must actually incur? Can't I just give it to somebody else? Can't I have a comp bench specialist sit down in his house anywhere and do my payroll? I don't need this entire HR department anymore. I'm not trying to do a prophecy of doom, but it's a possibility, because if they can survive this period without some certain roles, what's the assurance that when everything goes back to normalcy, they will bring back those roles. So it's something you should start thinking, and there's a salary freeze, very, very critical. Then also organizations are beginning to give leave for idle staff. So some companies have advised employees whose work cannot be performed remotely or who are redundant to proceed on leave, either paid or unpaid, depending on what category they look. Then there's also the aspect of rotation of staff. So because everybody, even by virtue of government regulations, organizations cannot operate at 100% capacity again because of social distancing and the rest, organizations are beginning to create a rotation for staff. So there's a schedule. You're to be in the office today, you should not be in the office tomorrow. So some organizations now only work maybe twice or thrice in a week. That's when you physically go to the office, while the other days in the week you will work from home. That's because all the teams cannot be there anymore, and they have to create all the staggered structure because there's now a rotation. Also very interesting is cancellation of international training programs. Who wants to go for international travels at this period? There are no board retreats happening anymore. Everything is now online. Even annual general meetings of organizations are happening online. And even as a matter of fact, the Company and Allied Act, CAC, has now decided to review the Company and Allied Matters Act to say that organizations can now do virtual meetings, and I can do virtually. It's now received. They can actually bring in their report virtually and a lot of things, just simply because there are no international travels again. Organizations are embracing virtual trainings. I've lost count of a lot of virtual trainings that have happened in this period. Organizations are now beginning to embrace it massively. And let me tell you something interesting is the fact that it's actually cheaper. It's cheaper for the organization. For the consulting firm like ours that are creating those trainings, it's not cheap for us. A training that will have typically valued at $1 million, for example, the organization is offering 300,000 simply because they say, sorry, but yeah, you're working from home, but it's going to be a virtual training. You're only going to use Zoom to deploy it. Yes, that's the reality. The reality is that they would want to reduce that cost simply because the organization is not even releasing the cost to them. So they would rather prefer to do virtual trainings, and some of them don't even want to do paid trainings. They want to use cheap trainings. Even from the employee perspective, they are interested in free webinars than paid webinars. But the reality still remains that even the typical trainings that you'll have offered physically for 100,000 naira, for example, you are getting to do it for 1/10 of that cost, simply because everybody is going through a new phase. And for you to be able to get the numbers of people to fill that classes because it's online, because you're also giving a bit of consideration. I'm going to deploy the training online. You're going to use your data to stream the class and a few things. So the cost needs to come down a bit. But for most organizations, they're suspending physical trainings. They're looking for cheaper options just to be able to develop the employees. Another interesting part is they are reviewing their variable pay scheme. So organizations are beginning to actually recalibrate. How do we check the matrix? How do we check the targets? How do we be sure that the projections we made at the beginning of the year is feasible now? I know a certain organization that play in the logistics logistics sector, that they went through a massive hit. Massive in the sense that except they are moving essential services item, they were almost 100% shut down for close to 3 months. Such categories of organization will rethink their variable pay scheme. Some organizations are even beginning to push everything towards variable pay and say, we're only going to pay you for the work done, which means if there's no way of proving your work, then why should we pay you? Now, some organizations are beginning to say, we are not going to do lump sum payment anymore. We're going to prorate it. They are suspending payment of lump sum payment simply because there is not enough cash flow as it is before COVID-19. And even post-COVID-19, the effect of COVID-19 in terms of reduction in sales for organization, reduction in revenue would still be around for a while before the world starts to adjust back to normal. Invariably, for some levels in terms of pay, there are temporary cuts in terms of some perks of office. talking about gym or club membership. Who wants to go to the gym at this period? Until recently. But those are some of the things that are being reduced. Vehicle fueling is being reduced. Overseas travels for senior level staff. As a matter of fact, there is a total restructuring of pay for most organizations and overall completely of pay for the organization, because the pay needs to be restructured to undo COVID-19 reality and post-COVID-19. Because one thing that is critical is that there is a freeze on pay increases. There's a freeze on merit increase. There's a freeze on a lot of things. Some organizations have decided to, for those that are doing pay cuts, are saying, we're going to do pay suspension. So we're going to pay you 70% of your pay now, 30% after. Some others say 50% now, 50% when everything goes back to normal. So there's a total restructuring when it comes to the pay of the employees. Now, another interesting survey before I take questions is MESA. So after completion of the MESA 2020 US Compensation Monthly Pulse Survey for the month of April, the following statement was made by post-COVID-19 compensation and strategies that we expect to have. According to Mary Ann Sandon, partner and US talent solution leader at MESA, she said, the run away for this crisis is likely to be long and the impact uneven, which will result in a lot of complexity around managing pay and reward, both across workforce segments and across location. That's very true. There are new realities in terms of legal implication to pay cuts. Talking about, this is what my offer letter says, now you're doing pay cuts. What's the legal implication? There are implications around organizations deciding to fall on their employees and say, proceed on indefinite leave, proceed on indefinite blah, whichever way it is. So there are a lot of implications. And according to MESA, which is a global leader when it comes to total rewards research, they are of the opinion that the effects would stay for a while. And they made a recommendation. One, MESA offered the following recommendation. One, take action for HR leaders, for HR professionals, as organizations as a whole. Take action to prepare for worst case scenarios, not just for employee rewards and workforce composition changes, but also for actions that influence career development. So it says organizations should prepare for the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario that they will file for bankruptcy. Worst case scenario that there may not be financial input or revenue for the organization. They should prepare for the worst case scenario. Two, organizations should have plans in place to provide HR support for these scenarios, as well as programs that are ready for support, such as severance. Yes, if you start to lay off employees, you must give them severance package. If it starts to outplacements, outplacement, remember when I mentioned the fact that organizations will start to embrace outsourcing, they will start to embrace flexible work, they will start to embrace freelancing. MESA has that to say that organizations will start to prepare for outplacement and reboarding, meaning if I tell you to go out of the office, I prolong you, I say you are still my staff, but I don't have anything to pay you now, proceed on indefinite leave without pay. When everything goes back to normalcy, I will bring you back to the organization. For you to do that, you must do an onboarding session for them. You must prepare for that. And three, shrink decision-making and process execution timeline related to compensation planning process to remain agile. There are complexity. There is no one size fit all. As the events of the pandemic start to evolve, there will be a need for you to tweak the decisions you are making. There will be a need for you to tweak your execution because there is no one size fit all. As a matter of fact, nobody knows everything at the moment. Nobody knows the full picture yet. Very critical. And finally, regardless of whether total rewards packages change at any organization, employers should regularly communicate with employees about programs that are in place that will support them. We cannot overemphasize communication. Irrespective of the changes in the pay, irrespective of telling people to go or not to go. Communication is critical. If you are working in a unionized environment, employees must know what you are doing as an employer. It must not spring up on them anyhow. It can become legal issues if it's not well treated. It's better you'd engage, and over-engage when it comes to pay, because you cannot cut pay without engagement, and it's very critical. Another critical point is this, as a roundup. You need to remember that you need to express empathy and concerns for employee situations. Nobody caused the pandemic. The employers didn't cause the pandemic. The employees did not cause the pandemic. So why should the employees suffer? Empathy is critical. Organizations at this period, within COVID and post, must not create or take a permanent solution to a temporary problem. COVID-19 would blow over. But the question is this: the way you treat your employees at this period would determine whether they will want to be your employees after COVID-19. Enough said. Empathy is very critical. You must treat them well. Employees are looking for such support now than ever, both in and out of the workplace. You need to let them know you are interested in their life. Employees want to work at an organization where they feel safe and supported. So the way you treat your employees at this period, even for those that need to go to the office, even now, do you give them PPEs, personal protective equipment? Do you give them all they need to be preserved? For those that are commuting in public transportation, what do you put in place for them to get to the office? Yes, those that are commuting in their own cars, we understand. But for those that are doing that on their own, this is a time where organization needs to communicate, show empathy, irrespective of whichever changes you make in your total rewards policy or total rewards package. Employees need to be sure that they are the center of such decisions. So I think I am done with my session and my presentation. I would want to pick questions now. Jide?
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for sharing from your wealth of experience. We're getting some reactions already from the attendees. Fantastic presentation, wonderful session. Thank you so much, Shegun.
Thank you too.
Okay, let's get more reactions. I trust you got so many insights from that session. Share with us some of the things you learned. And if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature here to ask your questions. And for those watching on YouTube, you can just send in your questions via the chat box. Okay, let me go and read some of the reactions here. Olayinka says, great presentation. Elizabeth says, thank you so much, Shegun. It was insightful. Rebecca says, wow, very powerful. Okay, Akinpelu says, this is awesome, sir. So glad. Okay, as usual, some people are asking for slides, so you already know the drill. If for every speaker, if they choose to share the slides, you also get it. So don't worry about that. For as many that we have permission for, you also get it. It sent you a link to the drive on Friday, so that drive will be updated after every weekend, so you can check back during the week. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Okay, waiting for questions. I did doing Esther says very impactful. Thank you for that. Umi says awesome session. Great. Okay, we're waiting for your questions or I know you broke everything down very well. Maybe that's why. But please, Okay, questions, comments.
So Jide, there's a comment. There's a comment. I think you should read that comment.
Okay. Okay. Is it from Olorunfemi Israel, Pastor Olorunfemi?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. While the training was going on, I was already restructuring my workforce. I started commuting immediately. However, how do you show empathy or plan for staff commuting from home? Okay, so there's a question there. We'd like to get feedback and the results you get from your implementation. You can please share with us. But for the questions, how do you show empathy or plan for staff commuting from home?
Okay, so one critical part around empathy is being genuinely interested in your staff. Okay, so there was something, so I'll share from my own personal experience what I implemented during COVID-19. So shortly before COVID-19 happened, I decided to set up my staff for working from home, got them a new laptop, did all of that for them. But I made sure during COVID-19, during those lockdown, I was checking on them genuinely. So when I use the word check on them, I was not asking for work-related questions. I created a different personnel during the COVID-19 period. It was a much more that my staff had to comment at a time that I seem to like this person that I'm seeing during COVID-19 that the person I usually see on the normal work day. Simply because I let down my guard at that period, because we're all going through it. We're going through a crisis. Show empathy for people by genuinely asking, how are they doing? I mean, how are they doing? Have you eaten today? How is your family coping with this period? Do you have enough cash to take you through this period? Now, that is you genuinely interested in your staff. You're not saying because I'm paying you, then you are all sorted. No. I know a certain organization, a multinational organization, that set up a session with their line manager every single day. And that session with their line manager is usually between 5 to 10 minutes. What their line manager discusses with their team is not work related, it's personal. How are you doing today, Shegun? So, how was your night? How are you coping with COVID? So, when you genuinely have a conversation with people that normally don't see your eyes on a good day, now start to see you genuinely interested in them, making sure that they are feeding well, they have enough to take care of their family, and showing empathy. I mean, genuine empathy. So that's the first point that comes up. Check on them. If you notice, okay, so there are times when I'm talking to my staff and I notice that she's not sounding well. That's one thing. Even when I'm speaking to my friend, I understand when something is wrong and I have to stop. Okay, are you sure everything is fine? Even when they tell you it's fine, okay, tell me about your day. Before long, you would understand what is the underlying thing there. Then giving them things to do around their health. When it comes to you checking on them, are you exercising enough? Are you eating enough? At the beginning of the lockdown, vitamin C was really encouraged. Eat a lot of fruit, vegetables. At least genuinely ask to know whether they are actually doing those things, just to boost their immune system. So it's more of you showing that empathy, not in words alone, but in you meaning what you say when you check on them. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have a couple of questions, but let me take some reactions from YouTube. So your fans are there. I can see the guru himself is here. I trust this man will gladly share. Lucia says, Shegun, well done. The insights are enlightening. EKMD in many cases, thank you, sir. This was a very insightful session. Many more reactions. Okay, let's take some questions here. Elizabeth says, what are the consequences of effecting a pay cut without consulting the employees because of COVID?
Okay, the implications is that they can have legal implications. Legal implications in the sense that if you have given me a contract of employment that states I'm going to be collecting X amount, It's also critical that when you are changing that contract of employment, you should consult me. You should not just take an unanimous decision. Usually as little as having a town hall meeting and explaining the current situation to your employee is very critical. Yes, the legal implications will start to unfold after COVID and after everything comes back to normal, but there are legal implications, and such legal implications is you changing the contract of employment without consultation. So if you get an employee that gets very good support, maybe from a body that is, from a lawyer that is ready to do pro bono, then the organization is going to be in for it, which means it's good to have that consultation. That consultations put them at a point that you had a conversation with them. If you are dealing with a unionized environment, you can't even go ahead to implement a change in salary without consulting them. They can scatter everything, which you should, it's more like you following due process. And it's also part of empathy. Because if you tell your employees what the organization is currently, so it calls for transparency and being vulnerable as well. The problem for most organizations is that they are not transparent with their staff. When they are making money, the staff does not know. When they are not making money, the staff does not know. So when they now come and say they are cutting salary, the staff say, no, we don't believe them. They are making the money. But if there's a level of transparency in the way you run your organization, the staff knows. They will be the ones suggesting a pay cut. And immediately they are the ones suggesting a pay cut to you. When the pay cut comes, they understand it's coming, rather than you implementing it without consultation, which is you breaching that contract of employment, which critically, it's a two-way thing, which employers must actually consider. So that's my own perspective on that.
Thank you very much. I can see a question from YouTube. We'll take it shortly. Just hold on.
Okay.
We have a number of questions here. Okay, I'm trying to get the other question. Okay, from this is a short one. I don't from Akin Pelu, who is eligible for salary increase?
At this period, it all depends on the organization. So let me give you an example of an organization in the essential services. So a certain organization in the essential services implemented a pay increase even in the midst of COVID-19. Yes, a certain organization did that. But what they did, okay.
Yeah, sorry for cutting. So who is eligible, and then how should it be determined? The salary increment, how should it be determined?
Okay. So to answer the question, so let me complete the conversation I was having. Then I'll talk about who is eligible and how should that be done. One, the organization that implemented a salary increase during COVID-19, what they did was this. Usually every single year after their performance review, they usually have salary increments. And their salary increment was usually between 20 and 30% sometimes, depending on, between 15 and 30%, depending on the employee and the rest. So what they did during COVID-19, which coincided with when they were supposed to do an increment, was that they reduced the increment. So rather than give a between 15 and 25, 30% that they usually do every year, they actually reduce it to between 5 and 15%. So for them, it was saying, we cannot do 30%, but we would give you something irrespective of whether it is enough or not enough, just still maintaining the tradition of increment. Now, who should be eligible? Depending on your total rewards policy, that should determine eligibility, who is eligible for increment or not. Very critical, because if you have a reward policy that determines who is eligible, what you would normally do in a COVID-19 scenario is to review that criteria for eligibility. Meaning, because of COVID-19, can we afford to give 20% increase now? Can we sustain it? Then you may be able to now say, okay, rather than give 20% increase, which is on the high side, why don't we do, can we afford to do 5, 10%, depending on what it is? Or can we suspend the increment when things normalize? which is very critical. So usually when you're talking about salary increment, there is only a policy, a total reward policy that covers that angle, that talks about eligibility, that talks about criteria, that talks about how much increment must you make on the pay structure and the rest like that. So that conversation should have been handled from your pay policy. And at this period of COVID-19, what you would need to do was to review that policy to accommodate the current business reality. I hope that helps.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next question is from Karish, saying, in showing concern for employees, would it be preferable to offer a housing allowance or training? Because from stats gathered, they weren't highly interested in sponsored training, which the employer felt sad to know. I think that's in our organization.
Okay, I think there is no one size fits all. Majorly, it depends on what is the organization can actually afford to do at this period. If the organization can give an housing allowance, fine, they can do that. But usually, because of cash flow issues, some organizations are suspending anything that is lump sum payment for now till after they can afford it. Because if you look at the MESA survey that says we should prepare for the worst case scenario, and the effect of COVID-19, we have not started to see the effect yet. It's actually going to be post, which means later in the next year before we start to see it. So if an organization starts to eat into its own retained earnings now, before the time it needs it, then it's going to be a serious situation. So it's always better that it's rather you suspend that lump sum payment than give it out now and not be able to have any staff later. So it's usually a function of whatever the organization decides to afford, if they can afford to do it at the period. So if they can afford to give it without affecting business continuity, then why not? They can go ahead. But if they notice that it's not going to be sustainable, it's better they do what they can afford to do at this period.
Okay, great. Let me quickly take this from YouTube. Ken is asking, so how do you engage an employee whose report from salary survey and job grading exercise shows that employee role now needs to be downgraded?
Needs to be downgraded?
Yes.
That's a sensitive one, because if you're going to be downgrading my role, it was not my fault in the first place. It's the organization that decided to put me at the level I am. So usually in surveys, we don't advocate a reduction in salary. Even when the salary is too high than what it should be, the best we can do is that you should freeze that salary or move that role into where it is supposed to be. But at the moment, immediately, nobody wants to implement a salary reduction. As a consultant, that's not the best that anybody would advocate. And I'm sure that's not the best you would want to give to that employee, because if you look at it very deeply, the employees may actually be performing on that level, because where you place that role was not the employee's choice. It was somebody's choice in the organization. So it has to do with you reviewing that role to be sure whether it's I would not recommend a salary downgrade. You can't call my name off for salary downgrade. But I think the best option is to freeze that salary or move that individual into another role the person is suited for at that level. But a downgrade may come up when you are recruiting somebody else into that role, but you can grandfather that role. So when you say grandfather, meaning whatever pay we're giving to that role remains like that. If anybody is coming into that role later, we'll revert to what the salary should be, not the one that we found out is higher. So that's what I mean. And that's actually the best approach.
Hello. Okay.
Okay, I'm with you, Julie.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. There are like 3 questions for the same person, so I'm trying to put them all together.
Okay.
So Elizabeth is asking 3 questions. So maybe we'll take, if they are not related, we'll take them one. Employer is cutting costs by all means and insisted that staff provide for themselves PPE. Is there any legal implication of this action on the company? That's the first question. Maybe we should just.
Okay, there is typically no legal implication. What the employer has just done is the lack of empathy. That's what, if the employer can actually afford the PPEs, then they should go ahead to afford to give it to them. There are times when your little effort of doing something matters than you doing the original. So there are times when you notice that, yes, the employees can afford their PPEs. But when they come into the office space, as little as you providing face shield, if you can afford it, it doesn't cost you anything. It's all part of empathy. Putting sanitizers and making sure that at intervals, there are sanitizers at strategic places in the organization is your responsibility by law. The safety, the HSC of the employee is in your hands at this period. You cannot, if anything happens to that employee while in your service or while in your office premises, you are liable. There is nothing you can say about that. You are liable. But if you can make that provision for them, because the regulations based on COVID-19, according to government, says that no face mask, no entry to organizations. So what that means is that if your organization is found to breach the rules of COVID-19 compliance and your employees come to work without face masks, you are going to be the one that will bear the brunt, not the employees directly. So it's critical that something as little as that, you should be able to make provision for them. As little as giving hazard allowance for that period. Yes, it can serve. But if you feel that they can afford it, not an issue. But if you can afford it as an employer, it doesn't cost you anything by making it available. Some individuals may not even use the ones you provide. Take, for example, I will not use a face mask that I didn't buy myself. That's just my personal regulation. So even if I'm getting into a place and they are trying to give me a face mask, I'd rather use mine. So some of those things are personal. So one thing that is critical is you deciding which one works for you. It's part of empathy. Buy something that they can be able to use, because if anything happens while at work, the hand of the law will drop on you. From the government perspective, they'll close down your premises. The staff will go home and sit down. So those things are critical that for continuity. I know most FMCG manufacturing outfit, they don't have a choice. They have to make it so. They even make it mandatory that their staff should not go to any events that are involve a lot of crowd without their PPEs. It's very critical. So it's part of your employer's responsibility, majorly at this period.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So I think this is a follow-up on, I'm just trying to, because there are so many questions and we need to, so still cost-cutting policy, HMO is temporarily suspended in place of hospital retainership. Is this practicable? Did you get that?
What does the person mean by HMO and hospital? I need to understand. Because usually, I'm assuming that what they are doing is that they have an HMO cover and they also have an hospital retainership. Now, the most important part is that they are making provision for the hospitals of the employees if there is a need to go to the hospital. So it may actually be a cost containment measure, but the challenge may be that, is there a covering in terms of the hospital comparison to the HMO coverage? So what it means is if HMO covers everybody and only few people have access to the hospital coverage, then that may be an issue, because this is not the period where you should joke with your employees' health. I think that helps.
Yes, that helps. Thank you very much. Uchenna is asking, what can you do as HR partner in a situation where a company has slashed the salary by almost 50%, still using a target set pre-COVID to measure sales performance post-COVID? Interesting. Showing no empathy.
So Uchenna, I really empathize with your situation, because from what you are saying, it means the organization is not interested in the staff at the time they slashed the salary, plus the fact that they are still keeping the sales performance the same before COVID. Now, what I can just tell you for a fact is your organization is setting a precedent that you may not be able to correct, because I assume maybe they never did a consultation with HR before that was done. The best you can do, at least I'll give you the good side and I'll give you the other side. The best you would do is to encourage the staff. But if any staff chooses to resign at this period, I think that would be your best justification to say that that was a wrong decision on part of the organization. But you should not be encouraging the staff to resign, please. But if they choose to resign, it's a justification to say that what the organization did was not the best. But as much as you have, make sure that everything you have to give is documented. Don't be emotional. As HR practitioner, we try to be emotional sometimes. Let's back it up with data. If we can give enough data to show that that was a wrong decision, then you are good to go. I think that would help.
Thank you very much for the answer. Okay, there's a question from Akinpelu Olayiwola. How would you address a situation where organization has reviewed staff salaries two times in 3 months with employee full operation? I think it's
okay. How would you address a situation where organization has reviewed staff salaries two times in 3 months with employee full operation? I'm not sure. What I want to address is, I think that needs to be clear, right, Jide?
Yes.
I think it's not clear what we want to address there. Maybe if that would be clearer, that will help us.
Okay, please provide some context, Akinpelu, so that we are not just giving off-point answers. Olayinka is asking, in a situation for a remote work, is it okay to remove the transportation allowance from the salary structure of the employee since they are not commuting to work?
Okay, so if you choose to remove the transportation allowance, where are you taking it to? That's the question. If you choose to remove it, where are you taking it to?
Exactly.
I've heard that conversation a lot, but the question for me and the consideration is that to what end, to what extent? Are you suspending the transportation allowance for now? Because you would need to give it back to them when everything normalizes. Because that's a question organizations need to answer. Are you now rewarding that transportation allowance and calling it data and connectivity allowance? Are you just doing a nomenclature change? Because you cannot unilaterally remove that allowance without communication. 2, if you are removing it and suspending it for now, the best practice is for you to say, for now, we will not give it to you. We will keep it till when everything normalizes, we'll now make it available to you. But if you remove it, where are you taking it to? Because you will need to consult with the employees before you can do such a salary change.
Fantastic. I just want to take a comment here from YouTube.
Okay.
I like the comment, that's why I want to take it.
That's fine.
It's from Obaseki Samuel. I actually don't know him, I've not met him before, but he's a regular attendee at this conference. So his comment here says, let's all as participants promote the flag of Adulam at our various LinkedIn pages and connect with its page, as well as a way of expressing our profound appreciation to Adulam team and facilitators. So thank you for that. We appreciate that feedback. Shows that we're doing something worthwhile. So thank you, Samuel, for that comment. And
Awesome.
I've a link to the event page for this conference on LinkedIn. I've shared it in the comment section, so you can follow that link to share more feedback with us, and let's continue the conversations after these sessions. Thank you very much. One last question. Okay, I think from Elizabeth, I don't know if we've taken it before. Knowing the legal implications now, what can the employer do to avoid legal? Okay. legal issues from the implemented pay cuts. I think you've answered that.
Yes, it means they need to go about it the right way. Let there be consultation, let there be sign-offs. So if there's a sign-off on an agreement of what the pay cut is going to be, then it's easy. It means that there was a conversation before the contract was adjusted or the pay cut was implemented. So that way the organization is covered.
Okay. Kende from YouTube is also asking, I think it's a follow-up on our previous question. To what extent can organizations be transparent? What should be open and what should be hidden? I think when you're communicating that the organization should communicate what they earn and all that, so that's that's the first.
So I think that level of transparency speaks to the culture of the organization. So take, for example, if the culture of the organization has integrity as their core values, the starting point of being a person of integrity is from the organization standpoint. You should be able to do what you say you will do. Two, you should be able to make information available. So when I talk about transparency, if an organization is in the practice of disclosing financial status, so take, for example, sales guys. I usually have this issue when it comes to sales incentives. You tell the sales guy that he's earning 60,000 naira and his annual or his sales target for the month is 1 million naira. If the guy makes 1 million naira and it is visible that the guy has made 1 million naira, if you are now ready to pay him his commission, he already knows that there is visibility for him to know he has made his 1 million. Compared to a scenario where his target is 1 million, but he doesn't know when he makes the 1 million. Or even when he knows he has made his 1 million, you are telling him he has not made the 1 million, but he already knows he made the 1 million. So things as visible as knowing sales information, you don't necessarily need to go to specifics. So take, for example, if an organization comes and declares that our sales revenue for last month dropped by 10%. Organization A did not renew our contract. We lost X amount from there. Organization B did not renew our contract. We lost X amount. That's enough information for anybody to calculate that we didn't make money last month, right? If a sales guy is supposed to bring in 10 million per month, and there are regular meetings. I know some organizations that do regular team meetings, at least town hall meetings once in a month. And in their town hall meetings, and even at departmental level, they go to the extent of understanding the things, the clients in the pipeline. What contract are we supposed to start? What are we ending? How much are we expecting from this? What's our receivables? What's our payables and the rest? To a very large extent, majorly from the standpoint of revenue. If you can be transparent in terms of your revenue figures, what you are expecting, at least to the extent you can be transparent. I do not say that you should open up your entire book, because if the company is privately quoted, they may not want to open up that in terms of the balance sheet and the rest. But in terms of monthly figures, in terms of revenue, to a large extent, there should be disclosure. There are some things that employees can extrapolate. So let me give you a typical example. If I'm in investment banking, for example, and my company deals in money markets, it is already open secrets that money market prices crashed since the beginning of the year. As of last year, money market prices annually used to be between 10 and 12%, sometimes 13%. But even before COVID-19 started, it has dropped drastically to below 5.73% sometimes. So it's already open knowledge in the market that if my company is into money market, we are not making money. That's already open knowledge. It's already disclosed. If I'm into sales, for example, and I'm into FMCG sales, we used to produce 100 cartons or 100 crates of a certain item. And because of COVID-19, we are doing 5 crates. I don't need anybody to come and tell me that the money for 10 crates, 100 crates is not the same thing as the money of 5 or 10 crates. It's already open knowledge. So that means there's a level of performance disclosure as an organization and at departmental level that we can know. If you are close to finance, some of those figures are going to be open to you. So at the level of understanding, and because so the whole question is this, in terms of transparency, if you want to push your employees to do more, how will they know what level they are operating at the moment? How will they know where they should get to? So if you're telling your employees that for this organization to run, we need 200,000, 2 million to run this office every single month. And last month, we did not make one single sales and the office is still running. Do I need to tell you that we are running at a loss for last month? Because the 2 million that was supposed to come in did not come in, but the office did not shut down. That 2 million to run the office came from somewhere. It didn't come from the client. So that level of disclosure is critical, even when you want to do sales targets and even when you want to push employees. As HR professional, that's a level of information we should have access to. We should be friends to finance. We should not be far from them. Just as the speaker, James Oladapo said, when we're talking about people analytics, that HR people need to know the business of their business. So I will round up on that note.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful ride. It's been a great session with you. Thank you for all those thoughts and inspired thoughts and insights. Thank you so much for sharing freely. We appreciate your time and for honoring our invitation also. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Adolam.
Wonderful. Okay, I can see some hands raised. I don't know whether it's in error or they want to speak. So I'm just going to check if those people want to speak. Otherwise, we would call it a day here. Okay.
You want to speak?
Otta PPCA, do you want to speak? If so, you can unmute and go ahead now. If not, I think I saw another and probably, okay, I think that was an error. So thank you all so much for joining. This is our last session for today. Join us again tomorrow by 9 a.m. There are 3 sessions as usual tomorrow. So 9 a.m., 12 noon, and 3 p.m., all West African time. Please join us again for another exciting learning experience tomorrow. You can join our Telegram channel to get quick updates whenever we go live. Again, let me just reiterate that we are using a Telegram channel, not a group. So your contacts are saved from every other person in the channel. No one can view your contacts. Nobody will spam you if you join the channel. And it's not an interactive group, so you won't wake up to 1,000 notifications. It's just the notifications for whenever we go live that you get there. So thank you again for joining us. See you at 9 a.m. sharp and early for another wonderful, wonderful session at this tHRive conference. Trust me, I'm learning as much as you guys are, and this has been a great experience. So just take some feedback before we call it a day. Thank you so much, Shegun and Adelam Consulting. This is from Ajoke Jegede. Thank you so much, Shegun and the Adelam Consulting team. This is one of my best sessions, very insightful and rich. Thank you for joining. Iberi says, thank you very much. Great insights. I see you also on YouTube. Kende says, thanks, Shegun and Jide, for your time. You are great leaders and influencers in the HR world. Wow, thank you. Maybe that was more of Shegun anyway. Bakari Olaide says, this was such an insightful session. It came in many cases. Thank you, Adinam. So thank you a lot, guys. It's been a great time here. Like I said, let's show up tomorrow again. We have 3 sessions. We have Tunde Success Oshideko taking building a high performance organizational culture. We have Benga Jomale, and we have Stella Obialo as well. So it promises to be another wonderful time here. Please join as many sessions as you can. better still, join all the 3 sessions. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's great having you all. Signing off for today. See you all tomorrow.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers, Shegun.